Well, hello, and welcome to Wisdom Wednesday. It is June 7th, and we are in Proverbs 7. And we see that in Proverbs 7, Solomon is putting forth a plea to his children and to his listeners to listen, to think about, and to act upon the words of wisdom that he shares. In fact, he says to call wisdom your sister and insight your intimate friend, things that you hold closely, dearly, and that you desire to protect at all costs. Mark Twain has a quote. He said, "When I was 14, I couldn't believe how stupid my parents were. And when I was 21, I couldn't believe how much they had learned in 7 years." And I think that's a humorous quote because for anybody who's over the age of 21, we realize it's the teenager who's learned an abundance in 7 years, not so much the parental control advice that's been given. And I've experienced this in my own life. In grade 9, we had a teacher in science, and he was easily distractible. He was a funny man, and we could distract him from teaching us anything of value by asking questions that he was interested in, such as how to ride an elephant, because he was from Africa. And his teaching methodology for us was to have us he would put notes on an overhead and we would write out the notes word for word. And that was his teaching style. And I'll tell you, friends, I'm not terrible at science, but I was awful in his class. I barely passed grade 9 science because I couldn't figure it out for whatever reason. And then I applied for college a few years later. And to get into the program I wanted to get into, I needed grade 11 biology, which I didn't have because I had gone the route of physics, not biology. And I had to take grade 11 biology during my 12th year of school in night school. And lo and behold, I walk into the class and there sitting at the front is the same grade 9 teacher I had. And he is my grade 11 biology night school teacher. And I thought, oh boy, I'm going to lose my opportunity to get into college. But something had changed in me over those 3 years because his teaching style did not change a lick. He taught exactly the same way. Here's the notes, write them out. You'll learn the notes, you'll pass the test, you'll get your mark. But something in me had changed because when I went into that, there was a purpose and a reason for why I was taking grade 11 biology. It was to get into a program that I wanted to get into. There was incentive for me. There was something more valuable and important at the other end of this hard work that I now needed to do. And furthermore, I had learned more about how to learn in the 3 years of being in high school. I would like to, and I'll successfully say, I passed that course. That was probably the highest grade I've ever gotten in any high school class. Is I got a 98% in that class, and there was 3 individuals in the class who I shared study notes with, and they also passed. And in those 3 years, I learned something, and looking back and reflecting upon it, I learned something that I believe Solomon is trying to tell us here in Proverbs chapter 7. And it has to do with listening and applying the instruction. But Solomon is also aware of the fact that we will likely miss that the first time around because we kind of want to do it our own way. And we don't really want to listen to those who have gone before us. But he talks about this challenge that exists. He says, I've looked from the window of my house, I've looked through the lattice, and I've seen among the simple, I've perceived among the youth a man lacking all sense. And what we see here written out in Proverbs 7 is a story of an individual who's been given an opportunity to walk in wisdom, but instead gets distracted in life by the shiny things, by the things that look fun, by the things that look desirable, but really they are rotten, like the Instagram post of a beautiful apple, but on the backside it is completely rotten. These things look flashy, they grab our attention, and they always try to speak to our human desires, tempting us to walk this path of destruction. In fact, in Proverbs chapter 7, Solomon says that this path is like a woman who goes out to a street corner, a prostitute, and she says, hey, I made my bed, and I've put in the spices, and everything's ready, and I've been waiting for you. And there's always this alluring of like this personal desire, this personal attention and retention of things that are flashy that will often fickle and fade away as time progresses. And it's always personal, it's always now, and it's always like, don't miss this. And what Solomon says is that by falling into that trap, he says that let your heart not turn aside to her ways. This is Proverbs 7:25. For many of victims has she laid low, and all her slain are a mighty throng. Her house is the way to Sheol, going down to the chambers of death. This is the path of destruction when we allow the human desires of our heart to gravitate towards things that are flashy and a flash in the pan, to gravitate towards things that are shiny and not things that actually last, when we gravitate towards fool's gold rather than true gold. And Solomon is saying that this trueness that we need to gravitate towards is found in wisdom, it's found in integrity, it's found in recognizing the little things that are actually distractions and setting them aside. We got a train going by here. It's giving us lots of whistles. I'm going to take that as cheering for this morning's message. But as Solomon explains here and through Proverbs 7, and as I reflect on my life, and maybe you can reflect on yours, what are the moments where we've chased after what is flashy, and what's the result of that been? And sometimes that result is like instantaneous. We're like, oh, bad choice. Sometimes it takes longer to walk out. Sometimes we try to overcorrect that choice for so long that all of a sudden it's become our life. And we go, what do I do now? And friends, that's when we turn to Jesus and we say, God, I don't know why I've got, or how I've gotten to where I am, but here I am. Would you lead me to where you need me to be? And like Solomon explains in this chapter, like Mark Twain shares in his quote, and like I've experienced in my own life, reflecting, growing, developing, and allowing the Word of God to really become our voice of wisdom is so key in the future development of what it looks like to no longer be distracted by these flashy things, but to be focused people on what God is calling us to do. So a challenge for us today is to hear wisdom and acknowledge it as wisdom, but also to see that which is flashy and that which is shiny and that which is trying to gravitate to our desires and say, not today. I have a sticker in my office and it's on my desk and it just says, not today, Satan. And I like that quote, not today. Nope, can't distract me with that today. And so friends, I want to encourage you. I want to challenge you that as we read through Proverbs together, as we look at the opportunities that come forward in life, assess the long-term purpose of them, not the short term. Because in the short term, we will always gravitate towards that which makes us feel good. But in the long term, we'll work towards that which is actually useful for our lives. In the Bible, we see that the Christian faith is not a sprint, it is a marathon. There are moments where we sprint, but it is a long-term following of Jesus, of being like Christ, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, decade after decade, of pursuing and being like Jesus. So today, are you chasing the flashy things, or are you setting them aside for the purpose of the vision that God's placed in your life? If you don't know what that vision is, spend some time in prayer. Spend some time reading. Go find a friend who is maturing in the faith and go spend some time with them and ask them to help you find vision and focus so that the little distractions that come up will no longer distract you from what God has purposed you to do. And friend, I want to just encourage you in that journey. Continue to seek wisdom, continue to pray, and continue to be diligent in applying the things that God is teaching you. God bless, and we will see you next week on the 14th for our next Wisdom Wednesday.